Do you know the moment that will make her question everything she ever thought about you? The moment when she starts losing her mind without even realizing why. It's not when you argue, it's not when you chase, it's not when you beg for clarity or try to explain yourself for the 100th time. The moment that changes everything is the moment you go quiet, and I'm not talking about a little silence. I'm talking about complete withdrawal of your attention, of your energy, of your emotional availability. Because when a man finally stops performing for someone who never truly valued him, he stops feeding the illusion she built around control, manipulation, and expectation. And the effect, it's instantaneous, it's visceral, and it's terrifying to her in ways she will never admit. She will replay every word you said, every gesture you made, every moment she assumed she could push or pull you without consequence. She will start questioning herself, her choices, her feelings, and she will feel the absence of your energy like a storm hitting her soul. Your silence will make her confront truths she has ignored, truths she never wanted to see. And here's what shocks most men. It's not about punishment. It's about power, clarity, and control. The kind that comes when a man finally realizes his worth does not depend on her validation. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why silence is more dangerous than words, more revealing than confrontation, and more powerful than anything you've ever tried before. You will see why the moment you stop reacting is the moment she finally realizes who the real prize was all along. And if you watch carefully, you'll learn how to step into that power yourself, without a single word, without a single chase, and without ever looking back. The moment you go quiet, something remarkable begins to happen, something she never saw coming, and something most men never fully understand. Silence isn't empty, it isn't passive, it's a mirror, and when you finally stop chasing, stop explaining, stop pouring energy into someone who has grown accustomed to taking it for granted, that mirror reflects the truth she has been avoiding all along. When you are present, she is busy performing, controlling, convincing herself that she holds the power, that you need her, that your emotions revolve around her whims. But silence shatters that illusion. Suddenly, there is nothing to manipulate, nothing to argue with, nothing to persuade. All that is left is her confronting the reality that she never fully appreciated the man in front of her. You see, presence can be deceptive. A man who constantly communicates, constantly chases, constantly explains himself is giving a performance, whether he realizes it or not. He is the actor in a play where the other person writes the script. And as long as you are acting, she believes she holds the pen. She believes she has control. She believes she understands your value because it is always available, always within reach, always at her disposal. But the instant you step back, the script is ripped from her hands. Silence forces her to see what she has been blind to. The emotional labor she took for granted, the consistency she ignored, the loyalty she assumed was permanent. In that quiet, she sees you as you always were, not as the reflection she wanted to see. Psychologically, this is the moment when awareness hits. Women are deeply intuitive, yes, but their intuition only operates when the signals are consistent and interpretable. When you were always speaking, always reacting, always present, your mind was predictable. She knew when you would respond, what you would say, how you would act. That predictability became a cushion, a soft place for her ego to rest. But silence changes the equation. When you withdraw, you are no longer predictable. You are no longer available. And with that unpredictability comes reflection. She has to reconcile the difference between the man she thought she understood and the man who is quietly observing from the sidelines, unaffected, composed, unwavering. This forces her to confront her own behavior, her own choices, and the gaps she never wanted to see. And make no mistake, she will feel the impact on an emotional level that is immediate and undeniable. There is no conversation that can communicate your worth like your absence can. There is no argument that can show her the value she ignored, like the quiet that leaves her questioning everything. She may not admit it. She may not even consciously recognize it at first, but her mind will begin to wander, to replay, to analyze. Why is he not reacting? Why is he calm? Why does he not need my attention to validate his existence? And in that wandering, that searching, she starts losing the narrative she once controlled. She begins to see the reality of what she lost, the truth she could not fabricate through her own illusions. This is the power of silence. It is not passive. It is deliberate. It is not absence. It is presence in its most profound form, presence of self. Because when a man goes quiet, he is no longer responding from fear, from desire, from attachment. He is responding from clarity, from discipline, from understanding his own worth. That clarity cannot be argued with. That discipline cannot be manipulated. And that understanding of self, when fully embodied, becomes a force she cannot ignore. Silence becomes the revelation. Silence becomes the exposure. Silence becomes the moment where she finally understands, with stark clarity, who she underestimated all along. So the next time you feel the urge to explain, to chase, to justify your presence, remember this: your silence is more powerful than any words you could ever say. It is a mirror she cannot break. It is a truth she cannot avoid. It is the one thing that communicates everything about your value without a single syllable spoken. And in that quiet, you are not losing anything. You are gaining everything. You are reclaiming your power. You are forcing her finally to face what she has always denied. Remember this: the moment you stop speaking to prove your worth, you let your worth speak for itself. And that truth is louder than anything else she will ever hear. Your absence hits harder than your words ever did, and this is where most men completely underestimate the power of stepping back. Words are fleeting. They can be argued with, dissected, twisted, or dismissed. They exist in the moment, but they are ephemeral. Absence, on the other hand, is undeniable. When you are no longer there to respond, no longer there to validate, no longer there to fill the spaces she once assumed were permanently yours, she begins to feel it in a way that words could never communicate. Your absence is a force. It creates space, tension, and awareness simultaneously. It is a void that compels her mind to work harder, to question deeper, to search for what is no longer freely given. And that search is where the shift occurs. That search is where her mind begins to unravel. Think about this: when a man is always present, always texting, always replying, always making himself available, she begins to take him for granted. Presence becomes expected, routine, almost invisible. You could be doing everything right, giving everything, yet it will be seen as ordinary because it is constant. She doesn't notice the value of water until it stops flowing, and that is exactly what absence does. It stops the flow. The moment you stop being constantly available, you interrupt her comfort, and you force her to confront the reality she has ignored. Suddenly, she sees how much she relied on your energy, how much she depended on your validation, how much of her emotional landscape was shaped by your responses. And when she realizes this, her mind starts to spiral because she understands, consciously or unconsciously, that her world has changed, and she didn't orchestrate it. This is not manipulation. This is awareness. This is the natural consequence of value being respected. When you remove yourself from constant interaction, you create a space where her thoughts have to engage with the truth of your absence. She may initially try to fill that void by controlling the narrative, by testing the waters, by reaching out, or by pretending indifference. But nothing works the way your consistent absence does, because it is a force she cannot predict or control. It breaks her habitual patterns. It removes the safety net she has been walking on. And that is when she feels the impact, not in words, but in the silence between moments, in the emptiness that demands her attention, in the reflection of what she has been overlooking. There is also a profound psychological element here. Humans, particularly women, are deeply wired to notice shifts in behavior and energy. Your presence, while comforting, can be undervalued because it is expected. Your absence, however, is noticed immediately because it disrupts the status quo. It creates cognitive dissonance. Her mind starts asking questions she never allowed herself to ask before. Why isn't he here like before? Why isn't he reacting to me? What has changed in him that makes him no longer predictable, no longer available, no longer a fixture in my life? And the truth is, nothing changed in him except his understanding of himself. He finally realized his energy is finite. He finally realized that his worth is not contingent upon her recognition. He finally realized that absence is a form of presence, a declaration of self-respect that cannot be ignored. The brilliance of absence is that it communicates more than words ever could. It does not shout, it does not argue, it does not negotiate. It simply exists, unwavering, steady, and undeniable. And the effect is cumulative. Every day of silence, every day of quiet withdrawal, every moment you refuse to overextend for someone who never valued it, amplifies her awareness of what she has lost. Your absence becomes the loudest message of all, that you are not dependent, that you are not controlled, that your value is not for her validation. And this realization hits harder than any argument, any explanation, any apology could. So if you are tempted to over-explain, to chase, to fill the void with words and justifications, resist it. Absence is your most potent form of communication. Let your presence be felt in your absence. And let her mind do the work that words never could. Let her feel the weight of what she took for granted, and let that awareness become the catalyst for her reflection, because absence is not emptiness. It is power, clarity, and truth made visible through the spaces you intentionally leave unfilled. Remember this: the louder she notices your absence, the clearer she understands your worth. Silence communicates more than speech, but absence speaks louder than both. Silence removes her control, and this is where the dynamics of every relationship are laid bare. Most men don't realize that while they are speaking, while they are explaining, while they are chasing, they are giving someone else the power to dictate their value. Every word you say, every reaction you have, every effort you put into convincing her of your worth reinforces the illusion that she holds the pen, that she is the author of your emotional life. But the moment you go quiet, the moment you stop performing for her validation, you pull that pen back, you take back the narrative. And when that happens, she suddenly realizes she has been living in someone else's story without knowing it. Control is a subtle force. It is rarely outright, it is rarely acknowledged. Most people believe relationships are about love, connection, and mutual respect. And yes, those are part of it. But power is always present beneath the surface. The person who controls the emotional flow, who dictates reactions, who can create tension or ease with a single gesture or word, that person holds the invisible leverage. And when a man constantly responds, constantly explains, constantly seeks approval or acknowledgement, he hands that leverage to her. She can push, pull, manipulate, guilt, or charm, and he reacts. That reaction is the proof of control. That reaction is the evidence of influence. And she thrives on it without even realizing how dependent she has become on your energy to define her environment. This is where silence becomes revolutionary. Silence is not passive. Silence is not avoidance. Silence is a deliberate withdrawal of the very resource she relied on to maintain her power over you. When you stop reacting, she suddenly cannot read you. She cannot predict you. She cannot bend your emotional state to fit her needs because you have taken back your own stability. And in that space, she begins to panic, not because she lost you, but because she lost the ability to dictate your response. She has lost the leverage she believed was hers. She begins to feel the weight of her own behavior, her own assumptions, and the truth she avoided when you were always there, always available. Psychologically, this is where chaos starts in her mind. Control is a comforting illusion, and when that illusion is stripped away, It forces reflection. She begins to question, why isn't he responding the way he always did? Why is he calm? Why isn't he chasing? Why doesn't he seem affected by my words, my mood, my manipulations? And the answer is simple but devastating. Because you have removed yourself from the arena of her control. You are no longer a participant in the game she thought she was winning. You have stopped performing for her audience. You are no longer her tool for ego validation, no longer her sounding board for insecurity, no longer her safety net for attention. You have become the observer, the silent force whose value she can no longer access on demand. This removal of control is profound because it exposes the reality of the relationship. When a man goes quiet, it communicates more than speech ever could. It communicates boundaries. It communicates self-respect. It communicates that your life, your energy, and your attention are not for her to take at whim. And in that clarity, she begins to see her own mistakes, her own entitlement, and her own lack of understanding of the person who has been consistent, loyal, and patient all along. Silence strips away the story she created, the version of reality she wanted to believe, and forces her to confront the truth. There is also a philosophical depth here. Control only exists when one gives it away. You cannot remove someone's power if you still hand it to them every time you speak, every time you react, every time you justify yourself. Control is only taken back through deliberate restraint, through intentional silence, through the courage to prioritize your own equilibrium over her comfort. And that is why silence terrifies her. It is not absence. It is power returned to its rightful owner. She may try to provoke, she may try to manipulate, she may try to regain the influence she once had, but her efforts fall flat against the calm strength of a man who has reclaimed himself. So remember this: silence is the ultimate tool for removing her control. It is the demonstration of independence, the proof of self-respect, and the reflection of strength. It is not coldness. It is clarity. It is not apathy. It is authority over your own life. And when you master this, when you stop reacting for her, when you stop performing for her, you no longer exist in her narrative as a character she can manipulate. You exist as the author of your own story. The moment you remove her control, you change everything. She can no longer play the games she relied on. She can no longer manipulate outcomes. She can no longer define your worth. And in that quiet, deliberate absence, she is forced to confront a truth she has been avoiding. The man she underestimated was never hers to control. Silence reveals your strength and discipline, and this is where most people misunderstand the true power of restraint. Strength is not measured by how loudly you speak, how passionately you argue, or how often you chase approval. True strength is measured by how consistently you maintain your center when chaos is unfolding around you. When you go quiet, when you stop reacting to every provocation, every slight, every attempt to pull you back into drama, you are demonstrating a form of power that cannot be challenged. You are showing that your stability is self-generated, not dependent on her validation, not reliant on her attention, not dictated by her moods. Silence in this way is not absence, it is mastery. Discipline is the foundation of this mastery. It is the ability to resist the urge to explain yourself, to defend your value, to chase someone who has grown accustomed to your energy. Most men think that reacting is strength, that proving their worth is power, that persistence is influence. But persistence without direction, reaction without purpose, is actually weakness disguised as effort. Discipline is what allows you to step back, to hold your ground, and to remain unshaken when the world expects you to bend. It is what allows you to go quiet when she expects a reaction, to maintain calm when she hopes for chaos, to be unmoved when she seeks to provoke an emotional response. That restraint, that consistency, is a statement far louder than words could ever convey. Silence is also a profound expression of emotional intelligence. When you stop feeding into the narrative she wants you to perform, when you refuse to over-explain, over-apologize, or over-compensate, You are signaling something far deeper than presence. You are signaling that your energy is finite, that your respect is not automatic, and that your boundaries are non-negotiable. Women can feel this on a level that is immediate and visceral, even if they cannot articulate it. The calm, unshakable man who no longer reacts to manipulation or chaos becomes both mysterious and magnetic. He is no longer part of the predictable pattern she has been accustomed to, and that disruption forces reflection, self-awareness, and ultimately, respect. The psychological depth of silence is that it communicates without explanation. Words can be twisted, arguments can be debated, apologies can be dismissed. Silence, however, cannot be denied. It carries weight because it is deliberate. It carries authority because it is consistent. It communicates confidence because it is rooted in self-respect rather than fear of loss. When you maintain silence, you demonstrate that your sense of self is not contingent on her perception, that your value does not require constant affirmation, that your life is not dictated by her reactions. And this demonstration is transformational because it is the first time she is forced to see you as autonomous, as complete, as unshakably grounded in your own power. Philosophically, this is where silence transcends the superficial. It is not merely a tool for managing relationships or dynamics. It is an embodiment of self-mastery. A man who can remain silent in the face of provocation has mastered his impulses, his emotions, and his priorities. He has separated his identity from external validation. He has become the arbiter of his own worth. And this, more than anything, is what women subconsciously recognize as strength. It is the calm in the storm, the anchor in the shifting tide, the force that is neither reactive nor desperate. It is power in its purest, most disciplined form. This strength, revealed through silence, is impossible to ignore. She may attempt to test it, to provoke it, to push it, but it is unmoving. She may question it, doubt it, even resent it, but it exists beyond argument or persuasion. Every day you maintain that calm, every interaction you choose not to escalate, every moment you refrain from seeking validation, strengthens your presence more than any words could. Your silence communicates everything she needs to know: that you are grounded, that you are disciplined, that you are no longer accessible for manipulation, and that your worth exists independently of her recognition. So, if you are tempted to justify yourself, to explain, to chase, remember this: silence is your most profound demonstration of strength. Discipline communicates more than words, and calmness conveys more authority than agitation. When you master the art of quiet, you are not withdrawing. You are stepping into your power, reclaiming your energy, and showing the world and her that the man she once thought she could influence is unshakable. Remember this: strength and discipline are not spoken, they are lived. Silence is the proof, and in that quiet, your presence becomes undeniable. Silence forces her to realize who the real prize was. And this is the culmination of everything we've been discussing. Most women don't understand it in the moment because they are so used to measuring attention as the currency of value. When a man constantly gives, constantly explains, constantly reassures, she begins to believe that her role is central, that her presence defines the relationship, and that her attention determines the worth of the man she is with. But when you go quiet, when you remove yourself from the daily emotional exchange, she is confronted with the truth she never wanted to face: that you were never dependent on her, that your value existed long before she claimed it, and that she has been blind to what she truly had. Silence is the lens through which she finally sees the man she underestimated. This realization hits hardest because it is not immediate, it is cumulative. Every day of quiet, every withheld reaction, every moment you refuse to overextend chips away at the illusion she has built. She begins to replay scenarios, analyze conversations, question her behavior, and reflect on the subtle ways she took you for granted. Your absence magnifies your value because it creates space where your presence was once invisible. The things she assumed would always be there, The support, the attention, the loyalty are no longer available on demand, and that absence forces her mind to recognize the depth of what she lost. She begins to understand that the man she dismissed, the man she tested, the man she underestimated was never hers to manipulate. He was always the prize, and only now in your quiet does she see it. Psychologically, this is a profound awakening. Humans often only recognize value when it is no longer immediately accessible. When a man goes quiet, he is not punishing, he is demonstrating that his energy, his attention, and his love are finite and intentional. Women feel this on a deep, almost instinctual level. They sense the shift in power, the stability in your boundaries, the confidence in your independence. It creates cognitive dissonance because it contradicts everything they believed about the relationship. She has to reconcile the reality of your quiet strength with the illusion she held that your worth depended on her engagement. And that tension between what she thought and what is real drives the most intense reflection. Silence also exposes patterns she never acknowledged. She begins to see the small ways she may have taken your loyalty for granted, the subtle ways she may have assumed you would always be there regardless of her behavior, and the moments she discounted your effort or dismissed your presence. Every instance that once seemed insignificant now takes on weight because your quiet highlights the consistent value you brought without expecting reciprocation. In that reflection, she understands that the relationship was never just about her. It was about the balance she failed to appreciate, the man who consistently gave without compromising his own sense of self, the presence she ignored until it was quieted. This moment of realization is both humbling and transformative for her. She begins to recognize that the man she thought she controlled, the man she assumed would always be there, is independent, self-respecting, and unwavering. Silence becomes a revelation because it communicates what words never could: that your worth is inherent, that your energy is intentional, and that your boundaries are non-negotiable. She finally sees that she never held the prize. He did. And only when she feels the absence of his constant presence does she understand how rare and valuable he truly was. Philosophically, this is the essence of self-respect in action. You do not need to explain your value, you need to embody it. You do not need to chase recognition, you need to remain steadfast in your presence and absence alike. Silence is the medium through which your integrity, discipline, and clarity are communicated most effectively. And when she begins to realize the magnitude of what she lost, it is not just a lesson for her. It is a confirmation for you. It is proof that the energy, attention, and love you chose to give were always yours to give, and that stepping back does not diminish your worth. It amplifies it. So remember this. When a man goes quiet, he is not abandoning or withdrawing out of fear. He is reclaiming his space, asserting his boundaries, and demonstrating the value that she never truly understood. In that quiet, she sees the man she underestimated, the prize she assumed was hers, and the truth she can no longer deny. Silence forces clarity, and clarity reveals the real prize, always the man who understood his worth long before she did.